Hi guys, today is the 24th of August 2020. It's 39 minutes past 12 in the afternoon over here in the UK. Wanted to quickly talk about this scene. We've got George Bush, he's from Texas. His head is spinning around like a hurricane while his hands are indicating waves perhaps beneath that hurricane. And his wife's name is also Laura. So I found it interesting, or I find it interesting, that this hurricane, whose name is Laura, will be approaching Texas around the 27th of August. Just potential interest. It may not mean anything, but I find it interesting, especially since his head does spin around like a hurricane, and we have all those connections to him. And then we have the shark, which indicates the submarine which he's looking at. And as he comes round, we see some sort of event which makes the waves come up and then spread out, which indicates a possible tsunami from an underground or underwater explosion or eruption. Can't really say at this point, but that's what the motions of his body indicate. In this scene, you've got the oil rigs, or the oil rig, in the background, which gives you a strong connection to Texas. Then you've got the word rain, which J.K. Bugout pointed out. You can see the R just there, the A as it comes down, the I, and then the N. And obviously, hurricanes bring a lot of rain along with them. And then in reference to the George Bush character lifting up his arms in an indication of something disturbing the water from underneath, you've got this whole section, which I pointed out before, where you can see this slightly silvery grey area here with the lines that go across like this. This is a cross section of the Earth. So the Earth would be flat, just like this level here, but in the background, behind the oil rig, you can see that something has happened. The light that they're using, which looks like it's coming from the clouds associated with the rain, is actually also connected to what looks like an underground or underwater explosion. You can see the semicircle of light which spans right across and lifts whatever's above it. So when you look at this, you're thinking, oh, that's the background, that's the sky, that's the clouds up there. But then this section that they've drawn here clearly says to me, well, it's not actually clouds, because clouds don't have vertical lines going through them. So this is a cross section of the Earth which has been lifted up from an explosion, perhaps to do with the oil rig. Maybe they've buried a device in the ground using the oil rig. Obviously they dig very deep into the Earth searching for oil. And again, that this isn't only just oil slowly dripping into the water, giving us a connection to the Strait of Hormuz and other things, but it's also a fracture in the Earth. You can see that just there. And all of this may have some connections to do with a submarine. Again, in this scene, we have the shark behind as the waves are moving forward after that explosion from the underwater motion of his arms moving up. And here, in this area here, there's a submarine, which I've made clearer in what's supposed to be this image. Very annoying when things don't load accurately, but there we are. So you can see the black submarine just there. Whether it is coming up out of the waves as part of this explosion or has been revealed because of this explosion, I can't really say, but there seems to be an involvement of a submarine. And again, as I said, in the George Bush scene, we see that represented by the shark. So I feel like these two scenes tell essentially the same story. Some sort of weather disturbance involving rain, which very well could be a hurricane, as you see George Bush's head moving around. And then the underground explosion, as you can see just there. Again, that may be what we have here. And then the tsunami wave, or the wave of water. It may not be classified as a tsunami, but you can see if this is water, then it's lifted because of that underground explosion and the fracture of the Earth. again, I feel like that may be related to the cracking of the apple. Just a potential date reference for that. You've got the 8, which forms in the middle. We've gone past 8:12 for the 1-2, and we've gone past 8:21 for the 2-1. But we still have 30 for the 1, 2, 3, and the 0 spot. So keep an eye out for that around that time. Obviously, the apple has connections to New York, Hawaii, Italy, so we'll keep an eye out around there. Obviously, New York is then referenced again after this scene. So you go straight to the Statue of Liberty and that body of water moving forward. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that a body of water is moving towards New York, but then again, if something has happened in terms of an underground explosion, which has caused the Earth to fracture, split, as shown with the apple here, then of course you may expect a body of water to be this, well, obviously the water above the Earth where the explosion has happened would be disturbed and would obviously move out, depending on how big the explosion was, would depend on how big the waves are. And as it moves in, we again get that reference to a hurricane. Now, we often associate the hurricane with being above New York, which has happened plenty of times. But it may not mean that. It may just mean there's a hurricane at the same time as something happens. And I'm interested when I see the part after George Bush does the waves, which is the motion of looking over like something is flying overhead. And I've often interpreted that as some sort of missile. Now, in this scene, we look at the light going out from the torch, but we have to remember that the torch is also a representation of fire, and as it falls or descends, it sends that message of fire descending, perhaps on New York. And then when you think about that, you have the N and the Y reference in the flames of the house or boat if you're looking at it from a bird's eye view. But it has that reference, and again, you may have a 3 over here and perhaps a 1 or a 0 because there is a gap in the middle just there. So there's plenty to watch out for. I didn't mean to talk about all of that. I just wanted to actually talk about this, the scenes and how they seem to mirror each other as you go through the video, at least in the first half of the video. After that, it goes off into another tangent, looking at different areas like the Middle East and the Far East. But within the first, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes of the video, it seems to repeat scenarios in different ways, showing you the images on the blackboard, showing you the motions, which give you an idea of the events, showing it to you in an apple, and then again coming outside and seeing it in more of a real world scenario, as in the fracturing of the Earth, the oil rigs, perhaps with Texas, maybe a device being used to set off an underground explosion, generating a wave, where that wave could be maybe in the Gulf, if that's where, this is indicating it would be. But again, you have that reference to New York just straight afterwards, where you actually see the wave here with this darker section of water, kind of showing you this part of the water is raised up, and this part of the water is lower than this part of the water, and it moves, as you can see, it moves inwards. And again, you have this rippling effect coming from the center of the Statue of Liberty, or underneath the Statue of Liberty rather. which could indicate maybe something to do with that area activating this body of water. I really hope we don't see anything like that, but you know, it's 2020. You guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.